Amplified Bible. Do not store up for yourselves material treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart, your wishes, your desires, that on which your life centers, will be also. Material wealth was significant to the Israelites because it was frequently viewed as a sign of God's blessing and the reward for obedience to Him. Wealth accumulation for the sake of wealth accumulation is deceptive because it can provide a false sense of security or an inaccurate assessment of one's spirituality. So Jesus says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth. Do not treasure up for yourselves treasure on earth. Treasure represents the accumulation of what is valuable. However, those things that some people treasure are vulnerable to the destructive effects of life in a fallen world where moth and rust destroy and thieves break in and steal. The moth was commonly recognized as a destroyer of the most basic materials of life. A little devouring insect could destroy the finest garments. The term rust is a catch-all for consuming, implying not only a destructive action on metals, but also a broader deterioration. Rather than accumulating material valuables in this life, Jesus advises, store up treasures in heaven for yourselves. Paul refers to the gold and silver of the Christian's work for the kingdom that will be rewarded on the day of judgment. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 12 through 15, Amplified Bible. But if anyone builds on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's work will be clearly shown for what it is. For the day of judgment will disclose it, because it is to be revealed with fire, and the fire will test the quality and character and worth of each person's work. If any person's work which he has built on this foundation, that is, any outcome of his effort remains and survives this test, he will receive a reward. But if any person's work is burned up by the test, he will suffer the loss of his reward. Yet he himself will be saved, but only as one who has barely escaped through fire. But the contrast of treasures on earth with treasures in heaven more importantly implies a distinction of values. The heart represents the core of a person's being, the true inner person, the source of spiritual, emotional, and psychological life. The nature of their heart determines a person's values. Jesus has already indicated that the heart is the source of our good or evil deeds. This line of thinking is also applicable here because a disciple's heart can be evaluated based on what they consider to be their most important value. The righteous value must be God Himself. If Jesus' disciples keep their hearts entirely focused on the Father in heaven, then all other world treasures will pale in comparison. This will set a trajectory for healthy discipleship, including one's priorities, motives, righteous deeds, ambitions, security, personal self-worth, and relationships. Matthew chapter 6, verse 22 through 24, Amplified Bible. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is clear, spiritually perceptive, your whole body will be full of light, benefiting from God's precepts. But if your eye is bad, spiritually blind, your whole body will be full of darkness, devoid of God's precepts. So if the very light inside you, your inner self, your heart, your conscience, is darkness, how great and terrible is that darkness? No one can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon, money, possessions, fame, status, or whatever is valued more than the Lord. These difficult verses must be connected to the preceding passages to make sense of them. The disciple must choose between competing treasures. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 through 21. If a disciple's gaze is fixed on the earthly treasure as their value, personal significance, and earthly security, the heart will be dark as well. When we concentrate on something evil, the eye becomes a conduit through which evil enters the inner person. Loyalty to one's master is extreme. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. The biblical concept of hate and love understands them to be life patterns, not just emotional reactions. Psalm chapter 139, verse 21 through 22, Amplified Bible. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with perfect and utmost hatred. They have become my enemies. This prepares for Jesus' radical call for unconditional commitment to Him, to the point where one must completely reject anything that hinders attachment to Him and love, or completely give oneself to Him. The metaphors for choosing between masters culminate in the proverb, "You cannot serve both God and money. There can be no divided loyalties when it comes to God." As a rival god, Mammon, Jesus personifies wealth or possessions of all kinds. This is the Greek word mammona, which derives from the Hebrew Aramaic word mammon, which means wealth, riches, property. The temptation to worship the god of materialism was well known in Judaism. Greed and covetousness are the favorite traps of the evil one, so commands and warnings against greed and covetousness are common in the Old Testament. Finally, there is only one option: service, love, and devotion to God or Satan. Loving God entails serving and giving oneself entirely to Him. Heart, soul, mind, and strength. Matthew chapter 19, verse 16 through 22, Amplified Bible. And someone came to him and said, "Teacher, what essentially good thing shall I do to obtain eternal life? That is, eternal salvation in the Messiah's kingdom?" Jesus answered, "Why are you asking me about what is essentially good? There is only one who is essentially good. But if you wish to enter into eternal life, keep the commandments." He said to Jesus, "Which commandments?" And Jesus answered, "You shall not commit murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony. Honor your father and mother, and love your neighbor as yourself. That is, unselfishly seek the best or higher good for others." The young man said to him, "I have kept all these things from my youth. What do I still lack?" Jesus answered him, "If you wish to be perfect, that is, have the spiritual maturity that accompanies godly character with no moral or ethical deficiencies, go and sell what you have and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And come, follow me, becoming my disciple, believing and trusting in me, and walking the same path of life that I walk." But when the young man heard this, he left grieving and distressed, for he owned much property and had many possessions which he treasured more than his relationship with God. Matthew chapter 22, verse 37, Amplified Bible. And Jesus replied to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind." Treasure is defined as anything we value above all else, and that motivates us to act. It is money for some, others see it as a source of power, others strive for celebrity or attention. Many things in this world are vying for our heart's attention. Jesus says that determining where our treasure is also determined where our heart is. Many people claim to be looking forward to heaven, but their hearts are caught up in the cares of this world because that is where their treasure is. Jesus warned us that earthly money has a finite lifespan. While it may temporarily satisfy us, it is unstable and fleeting. This world, in its present form, is passing away. Earthly treasure will be meaningless the moment we breathe our last breath. Jesus urged us to look beyond our last breath and into eternity. Our lifestyles reflect our perspective when we are focused on eternity, when our treasure is stored in heaven. We will all give an account of ourselves before God for every action and every idle word. Romans chapter 14, verse 12. So then, each of us will give an account of himself to God. Matthew chapter 12, verse 36. But I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will have to give an accounting for every careless or useless word they speak. Nobody is immune. Excuses will not be tolerated. Every thought we have is seen and known by God, and we are held accountable for the truth we have been given. Romans chapter 1, verse 18 through 22. For God does not overlook sin, and the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who in their wickedness suppress and stifle the truth. because that which is known about God is evident within them in their inner consciousness, for God made it evident to them. For ever since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes, His eternal power, and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through His workmanship, all His creation, the wonderful things that He has made, so that they who fail to believe and trust in Him are without excuse and without defense. For even though they knew God as the Creator, they did not honor Him as God or give thanks for His wondrous creation. On the contrary, they became worthless in their thinking, godless with pointless reasonings and silly speculations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools. When we make decisions on earth that benefit God's kingdom, we accumulate treasure in heaven. Even offering a cup of cool water to a fellow believer, according to Jesus, is worthy of eternal reward. Matthew chapter 10, verse 42. Amplified Bible. And whoever gives to one of these little ones, these who are humble in rank or influence, even a cup of cold water to drink because he is my disciple, truly I say to you, he will not lose his reward. It is not a sin to be wealthy, but our priorities tend to align with where our money is invested. Those whose riches are stored in heaven can never be taken over by their material belongings. They are unconquerable because there is nothing on earth that can be exchanged for the price of their soul. They value the currency of heaven and use their earthly treasure to purchase heavenly gold, which will never lose its value. When we put our riches in material things, our hearts remain rooted in the values of this world. When, on the other hand, we invest in things that have worth eternally, our hearts remain faithful to the Lord, and we are not tempted to mistakenly try to serve both God and money at the same time.